Minister Adam, welcome to the Chillinois podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for sitting down. For give us a brief introduction. Who are you?
My name is Minister Adam. I'm the congregation head for the Satanic Temple, Illinois. I'm also the registration director for SatanCon, which is the Satanic Temple's annual conference that we do. I'm also the co-director of the Satanic Representation Campaign, which is one of the several campaigns that the Satanic Temple does, and SRC, as we like to call it, deals specifically with ensuring our religious values are equal and opposite in plural spaces. And so, for example, if there's a holiday display somewhere on a state capitol, and a Satanist would like assistance in getting one up to exist separate to it, I can help with that.
Very cool. Well, once again, thank you for sitting down and speaking with me. We've been talking, we just dipped our toe in the water of like religious freedoms and such. And so, one organization or I don't even know exactly how to refer to the Satanic Temple, but the Satanic Temple has just always intrigued me, is what I'm trying to say. And so I've been wanting to learn more. I've done a little bit of my own research, but when I found out that Illinois had a Satanic Temple, I thought, well, why don't I just reach out? So again, thanks for sitting down.
Most definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Satanic Temple, and being able to dispel those is always a helpful endeavor, in my opinion.
Yeah. And maybe that's a healthy place to start. We don't have to get too in the mud on misconceptions, but why don't we just start with a misconception or with some misconceptions maybe that you encounter, and then let's talk about what you actually are.
Yeah. I think I'd rather actually opposite that and sort of explain. And I should caveat this by saying that, I'm speaking as an individual. I'm not necessarily speaking as a representative of the organization, but I am a member. I'm leadership within the organization, and also again, the head of TST Illinois, which I can speak to and for. Just a minor caveat there. But I think the first thing that people should really know is that we are a non-theistic religious group that utilizes Satan as a metaphor. And we embrace ideas such as benevolence and empathy, compassion, a rejection of arbitrary authority, and an understanding of duality in human nature, and all kinds of things like that. And there are quite a few myths about us, about Satanists in general as well, not just us, but other Satanists as well, that tend to muddy the waters or really poison the well when people think about who Satanists are and what they do in their day-to-day lives. I think that gives it a nice little bow.
Yeah. That was perfect. Can you give me more on the first part? You described, your non-theistic religion. You worship Satan as you said, as a symbol, not as a say that. Just get more into that. I want to learn more.
We don't worship Satan at all. Satan doesn't exist. But Satan,
yeah, right.
Satan is a very useful metaphor for the things like a rejection of arbitrary authority, and embracing of one's otherness, walking one's own path, and so on. There's a lot of different ways of getting there, but Satan tends to be an excellent mascot for this. And when we talk about Satan specifically, we're looking at the Romantic era idea of Satan. There's a lot of different Satans that have been sort of codified, and John Milton's is probably the best, probably my best and favorite interpretation of this idea of like this fallen angel that brings knowledge to humanity and rejects the tyranny and forced servitude of a prostration before a god that really just goes out and just murders people by the millions regularly. And so it's a mascot in that way. Within the Satanic Temple specifically, because there are other flavors of Satanism out there. We don't own Satan. We've never claimed to own Satan. But a lot of the beliefs of the Satanic Temple are really codified by the 7 tenets. The 7 tenets, I guess, would be considered, the core of the beliefs, and I'm happy to go over those if you want.
No. And I could even pull them up as you go through them.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm glad that you made that distinction, because while I pull these up, most people don't even understand that, like you said, Satan to you is not real. Right. Yeah. Like people don't that's the biggest, I'd say, misconception about all of this. So
yeah, it is an enduring fantasy, this Rosemary's Baby idea of Satanism, and it has a long and storied history with iconography, ritual, community, artwork, and all kinds of things like that have more or less nothing to do with what being an actual Satanist is like.
Are these it? I want to make sure I got the right one.
Yeah, okay. That's it. Those are the 7 fundamental tenets. That's correct. And these would be our guideposts. And they are not infallible or anything like that. And that we'll get to that when we talk about number 7. But that's a real important thing to remember is that these are not our laws. These are common shared beliefs that I think that kind of engender the spirit of Satanism to those that follow the Satanic Temple, in my opinion.
Yeah, so let's get into this, and yeah, so folks that are watching, you can see them displayed, but I'll have you read through them for folks that are listening.
Sure thing. So the 7 fundamental tenets. Okay, so number 1, one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. Do you want me to bloviate about each of these, or just kind of
please? Yeah, if you could.
I jokingly refer to this one as the vegan tenet. Sometimes another fellow Satanist once said in an interview, you'd be surprised how many Satanists are vegans, and that's absolutely true. I like to look at this from a little bit more of a Buddhist perspective of just the idea of lessening suffering or attenuating suffering where possible. Striving to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures, is a noble pursuit, ensuring that, our pets have basic healthcare needs and a dignified death, just like humans should have basic healthcare needs and a dignified death. And I won't go too far into the weeds on the vegan argument. I myself am not vegan personally, nor vegetarian. But I've always the caveat in this one is in accordance with reason. I guess one way of looking at this, and this is an abstract, this is not a real story, but like an abstract would be like if you hit, a rabbit with your car kind of thing, do you put it out of its misery? Would that be, acting with compassion, even though you're killing an animal? Those kinds of things come into play. And
right.
In the conversation of the gray area between two extreme points, I guess, of like never killing an animal and always killing, whatever. Nobody really kills animals. You understand the point I'm trying to make, though. And so that's the in accordance with reason, and the compassion and empathy. So number 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. This one I think is incredibly important, especially given the climate today. But it's always useful to remember that things that we take for granted as codified into law as rights or inalienable rights in some cases, have been illegal before. And we have very short memories when it comes to that. And, I don't think it's ever, slavery was legal for a while. That has never been, a just practice. It simply has not been to enslave another. And that was legal. And so that's a good example of what this tenet speaks to, the idea of a rejection of a codified, sort of law that flies in the face of, really the other tenets, but just, being a good person and treating other people well. So that's 2. Tenet number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. This one is probably the one that people are most familiar with, especially because of the Satanic Temple's staunch advocacy for things like reproductive rights and so on. But it's beyond that. and of course that is very important, but things like body modification, tattoos, piercings of any kind that somebody might be interested in, it's their body to do with what they please. Sex work is another great example of this. Sex work is not only work, but it should be the choice of whoever's engaged in it and literally no one else's. What two consenting adults do or more consenting adults do at any given time is completely up to those consenting adults and literally nobody else. And of course, when it comes to, healthcare, whether that be reproductive rights for those with uteruses that would like access to that, to those who don't have uteruses and that would like to have a vasectomy, for example, or end of life things and wanting to be able to, exit gracefully in the face of, a debilitating disease or whatever. Ultimately, these are our bodies to do with what we please. And that should never be a right that's violated.
Before you move,
Before
you move on, sorry to ask a question, but I've always been curious on this point. For the Satanic Temple, do like the right to use drugs kind of fold into that tenet? Well, you know what I mean? Like cannabis legalization and all of that.
Everybody is, that falls under bodily autonomy. Absolutely. There's no proscripted. Satanism doesn't say you have to use drugs. Satanism doesn't say you don't have to use drugs. Satanism says do what's great for you. Don't hurt people while doing it. And Bingo. So, if people are interested in partaking in cannabis or whatever, that is well within the freedoms of one's body being inviolable. I would argue, since we're going to have to get into this, obviously, based on the context of the podcast, that the struggle for justice ties into that quite heavily. I mean, you look at the overly restrictive cannabis laws and the war on drugs that has clearly been lost and continually is being lost. How many people have been thrown in prison based on a roach in their ashtray, or any number of very minor, incredibly minor things in which an adult is choosing to do a thing on their own that the state has decided using bunk science, which we'll get to in a minute, to do that. How many lives have been harmed? How many people have been thrown into prison? How much money has been wasted? How many families have been broken up, et cetera? And so I would argue that fighting against that falls under too.
Thanks.
So I hope that answers the question.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely does.
Yep. Okay. Tenet number 4. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. This is looked at in a lot of different ways, without sounding like I can swear on this, I would assume, right? Without sounding like too much of an asshole. I do see a lot of people I'm usually disappointed to see people look at this and be like, this means I can be a shithead. Freedom to offend, like that. I think that misses the spirit of the tenet itself. Many of us that identify as Satanists are others, and we identify with the other because we are othered. Whether that means we've grown up in minority religions, or we are LGBTQIA+, or we are BIPOC, or something, we are othered. And the freedom to offend is not necessarily an active thing. Me being a bisexual male offends people just by purely existing. Gay individuals offend people purely by existing. Individuals of a darker skin tone offend people just by existing. And this tenet basically says, fuck them, be yourself. But it's also, it also needs to, it balances with the fact that, we all have these rights to exist in the way that we do. And pluralism is the word that really kind of hits home. And I'm sure I'll bloviate about this later too. But that's a really, really important sticking point for me. It's not just some license to be a shithead.
Right.
If you really want to be, go for it. But, it doesn't say anything about freedom from consequences. Okay. Tenet number 5: belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. It's an evidence-based approach, a skepticism-based approach to basically everything. And it's not just, matters of the supernatural, which, I don't believe in. I don't believe in gods or, the supernatural. I just don't believe in shit like that. But I'm open to evidence of it, because I think a truly satanic position with these kinds of things would be agnosticism. But even beyond that, to kind of step back to that point about cannabis, all the junk science that came out, reefer madness and all that nonsense, a lot of the science around that was, cherry picked data in order to show links to X or Y or Z, or causation versus correlation and so on, or correlation versus causation and so on, and using facts to go to a point instead of utilizing facts and seeing where they lead. And that I think is a very important thing to do. And that is why it's such a beautiful and codified tenet, because it's a malleable one too. I think it was Isaac Asimov that said that any technology sufficiently advanced would be indistinguishable to magic to a generation further back or whatever. And so continual skepticism and pushing scientific understanding in all aspects of our lives, from the physical to the material to whatever, is greatly important. And coming at it from this angle, I think, is the purest and best way of doing so. Tenet number 6: people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. This one's pretty obvious. People fuck up. We're not perfect creatures. We misspeak. We hurt people sometimes with our actions, sometimes actively, sometimes passively, and allowing ourselves the space to grow and to fix these things is the best thing we can do. There's been a lot of people I've pissed off over the years. There's a lot of people that have pissed me off over the years. And again, I kind of like to look at this from a Buddhist perspective personally, of just, again, lessening suffering, but also an acceptance, and trying to shed things like grudges or hatred or fear, and instead, embrace the things that I have in common with people, even those that have wronged me. And then the last tenet, and this is absolutely my favorite one: every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. I mean, I can't think of a more beautiful way of saying this, but it means that our tenets in and of themselves could change based on the needs of the times. The ability to be inspired by these is beautiful, but then make something with it, and continue that sort of egalitarian and ultimately enlightenment-based satanic thought with reason, logic, and empathy. That is absolutely my favorite tenet. And it should be noted here, just as a minor thing, is that all of these tenets work in concert with each other, and they balance each other. And so when considering one, it's always suggested to consider it with others. The minor anecdote I'll give here is that during the height of the vaccine disinformation that was being bandied about when it came to the COVID vaccine, was definitely receiving emails to the TST Illinois inbox requesting religious exemption from vaccinations, which was utterly ridiculous and just a total misread of our tenets, because it was a claim of bodily autonomy, but it's a public health crisis. You can make other people sick if you decide to forego the scientific basis by which these vaccines are out there, and ignore the fact that by making other people sick, you could fucking kill them, as a tenet 1. And so that's a really good example of taking one, which is, tenet 3, and then completely ignoring the rest of them that balances out in that situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I mean, just if I could maybe even provide my commentary on it, just on that particular or that particular example. Um, when this tenet, the freedom of others should be respected, and to willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. That's basically taking on exactly what you just said, which is that, yeah, your body's inviolable. I had trouble saying that. But if what you're doing puts others at risk, that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, before we move any further, it's funny, again, people that don't know anything about the Satanic Temple, if they're watching right now, and we've gone through these tenets, they're probably thinking, as I thought the first time I went through the 7 fundamental tenets, I was like, wow, that's really agreeable.
Yeah, it's a great way of describing what our core beliefs are as members of the Satanic Temple. It's a very quick and easy, explanation, and it's so rational and reasonable. I mean, I myself, the first time I read them, I went, yeah, that's more or less how I live my life. That's beautiful. That works. And been around ever since.
Hell yeah. Well, tell me a little bit, like how does it work? Do you let's take a break from talking about like what you all do and everything else. Like, is there regular service? Do you have a church, or a location? I don't mean to say church, but
there's no physical location in TST, Illinois. There are members all over the state. And we do meet virtually and we meet in person, and both of the things have happened for quite a long time. The Satanic Temple has a headquarters in Salem, Massachusetts, which is also an art gallery that's well worth the visit. You can see things like the Baphomet statue, for example. The Veterans Monument. There's a library upstairs that focuses pretty heavily on the Satanic Panic. Some of us are pretty scholarly and like to read a lot, and so there's a reading room up on the second floor. You can actually stay there. There's a little bed with an ensuite kitchen and bathroom, so you can people can stay there and rent it out and so on. Yeah, and then there's congregations all over the country and really all over the world at this point. We meet regularly, like I said, online and in person. And
for folks that want to join, like myself, and get involved, where can we find the Satanic Temple online? Do you have an online presence?
There's for the organization as a whole, it's the satanictemple.com. And there's a wide and deep amount of information available on that site. In the FAQ, there's a reading list of material that can help sort of understand modern Satanism, romantic Satanism, classical Satanism, and modern Satanic thought, Enlightenment era thought, all kinds of stuff like that. Satanism doesn't exist in a vacuum. I like to kind of put that. I have been incredibly yelled at for being a little bit too scholarly and yelling about a lot of this kind of stuff, but I have a long history with it, and so I like to share that information. As for local, sometimes it's just as easy as just Googling, the Satanic Temple and then the state that you're in. For the Satanic Temple, Illinois, we do have a Facebook page. And an email address, which is easy enough, which is just the Satanic Temple Illinois @gmail.com. We occasionally do things in the public sphere as well. We are currently doing a Menstruating with Satan charity drive. And that is where we've partnered with the Pilsen Food Pantry, which is located in Pilsen in Chicago. And quite a number of businesses around town, breweries, bookshops, things like that. Where we have drop boxes where you can drop off menstrual products like sanitary pads and panty liners and things like that to benefit those who are potentially homeless or in need of these goods so that people can menstruate with dignity. Now more than ever, people need to know that their reproductive rights are taken care of. And so we decided to create this initiative, and it's running from July 15th until August 31st. And there's a full list of places that you can drop off these goods at on our Facebook page.
Perfect. I was going to ask, is the best way to like kind of keep up to date with what you all are doing with the Satanic Temple in Illinois, the Facebook page?
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives info on anything that we're doing publicly. I mean, members, it's not always safe to be a Satanist. And so some information is kept just to members, like where we meet and so on. We may do public things at some point, but at least for now, we're not. Everybody's a little bit spooked after the arson attack at headquarters in Salem.
I was about to ask you because I'm flirting with the idea. I love Satanism. I love everything that you've discussed so far, everything that I've found. And then you just said that. You said there's a risk at being a Satanist, and then you said there's an arson attack. Tell me what kind of opposition do you face out there?
It's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings. People, follow the bullshit, right? They think that Satanists are killing babies or draining blood or sacrificing animals and all kinds of dumb shit like that. And a lot of it is just people repeating what they've heard completely uncritically. And there's a long history of this. I don't know how old you are, but the Satanic Panic was everybody's watching Stranger Things, I would assume. Like Stranger Things is basically taking place during the Satanic Panic. For those that think that, kids that are playing D&D and listening to heavy metal are being unfairly ostracized in the show, that really happened. And it took place from around 1985 until about 92 or so. And the thing is, it never really went away. People still thought these things, even though, there was an FBI agent, Ken Lanning, who came out and he did his best to look into all these crimes. I was like, there's no evidence for this. This is all bullshit. There was a book, Satanism in America, by Dr. Sean Carlson and a bunch of other people that went through and looked at every single claim. And, Sean Carlson he's a STEM scientist. He's written multiple books on, the guy is like super legit. He went through and looked at a lot of these claims like, well, they've got a network of baby killings. Okay, well, where are the corpses for these babies? What would the logistics be of creating mass graves for, 60,000 babies in Kansas or whatever? And of course, it's all bullshit. And so it's easily debunked when you start to think about this stuff. And there's been a resurgence of it during modern era, specifically with the QAnon crew, which is taking a lot of the exact same claims. And I mean, down to the idea of like tunnels under buildings and, the whole Pizzagate nonsense. A lot of that has been reformed. Now, for me personally, this is shit I've always had to deal with because I was raised Jewish. And this is the same shit that has been said about Jews going back hundreds and thousands of years. It was the blood libel and the protocols of the elders of Zion, claiming that we were baking bread with baby blood and that we were in league with the devil and killing killers of Christ and all that nonsense. And so it's just, everything old is new again. But it's an inability to rationalize the outrageous claims that come out. And these individuals that are terrified of this idea of like a literal Satan are then terrified of the idea of Satanists. And so they think all these things that are just simply not true. And, the arson attack was this guy who's like claiming he's like a warrior of God or whatever, who tried to set fire to the place. And there are people inside, like people. It boggles the mind. But there's that, but there's also like, even beyond all that, it's just because of all the misconceptions around Satanism and because of all the misconceptions around, these kinds of, this rejection of, or denying Christ or rejection of religious, traditional religious ideas, that's very dangerous. And it's also, it's ostracizing, if you're in a community of, a couple hundred in a small town in downstate Illinois, and you don't believe in anything, like you don't believe in the God that you're being forced to pray to at the church, and maybe, you don't feel like you fit in at all, that can be incredibly hard on people. And to lose one's support network of family or friends or coworkers or whatever, it's a real bummer. I would, again, I'm just to reiterate, like, I'm mostly speaking for me here, but like it's very damaging to oneself to feel so othered all the time. So there's a danger in, being honest about being another sometimes. And that in and of itself is its own danger to this. I'm rambling a little bit, but I think you understand my point.
Yeah. It's nuts, but it makes sense. And it's so crazy, like you say, how short-sighted somebody could be to claim to be a warrior of God, but then, try to set fire to a building with people inside of it. Yeah. So,
yep.
It's, so when I was growing up, and I grew up in a small school, and I was raised religious, and a lot of people that I went to school with were religious, like I say, small school. And then towards the end of high school, I started to question my understanding of religion and what I believed in. And I'll never forget this debate I was in, where it was like the very end of the debate, and I just had not been convinced yet that I should believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, which is the debate. And somebody said, here's the thing. You don't have to believe in Jesus. That's not what church is always about. Church is about community, and church is about volunteering and donating, and the list of things. And I was like, you can do all of those things. This was my response. You can do all of those things without believing in magic. And that's why I've been so fascinated with the Satanic Temple. When I found out about the Satanic Temple, to me, they do all those things. They have that sense of community. They do those things that the churches pat themselves on the back. And those are good things. I'm not saying that when churches do those things that, like, those are good things. Yes, please continue to do those things. But it's just, without the magic part of it, I was like, there's my group of people. There they are.
Yeah. I mean, there is a fundamental drive, I think, for many people to find a community of like-minded individuals. I did not approach the Satanic Temple, or Satanism in general, and expecting to find a group of people that I really enjoyed being around. I'm a bit of a loner, personally, no matter what or who I am, but that is at the end of the day, I'm a bit more of a loner, and it's been kind of interesting to sort of recontextualize the idea of community and that relationship that I have with a religious community around this. I have never personally not been me. I got expelled from Hebrew school, as a kid, because I was such a questioning little shit. And, I fought tooth and nail to not have a bar mitzvah, although I did. And, one of my arguments at the time was like, any, self-respecting Jew should be insulted that I'm being forced to do this, because I don't believe in this. This is lip service. I shouldn't be doing this. And here I am at 13 being, yelling about this. But for a lot of people, that sense of community, this might be the first time that they've had anybody around that hears I'm gay, or I'm in a polyamorous relationship, or I'm, X, Y, or Z, and everybody's like, whatever, cool, be you. No one cares. And if anything, it's like, awesome, you're happy being you, cool, do that. That's great. There's not a prescription on behavior. There's not a need to conform to any, really other standards in a lot of ways. You can just be you. And there's a lot of Satanists that don't join the Satanic Temple or the Church of Satan or any satanic organization, that are very comfortable just being like, I'm just me. And that is such a valid thing, to just walk your own path and figure out where you want to go. That's the most satanic thing a person can do, in my opinion.
Yeah. I loved about the thing I loved about the story you just shared about you not wanting to have a bar mitzvah is that in that story and in your young age, you demonstrated that you knew what it meant and took to be a devout Jew, and you were identifying that you were not that. And you were also identifying that any self-respecting Jew should be offended that I would be doing that. Like, that's such I'm not trying to pat you on the back or whatever, but that's such an expansive or eloquent thought to have at such a young age. Because there's tears to that,
I appreciate that. But not everybody is like that. Some people didn't even have that choice. Some people were baptized and forced into confirmation and all these other things that have never once been able to question anything like that. They've never been given the opportunity, or it's never been told to them that they could even question that.
Right.
And that to me is the worst, because that's the trappings of that arbitrary authority that I'm so adamant about fighting against. People should be able to do that if they can, but if they don't even know that they can, that's real problematic. That's dogma at the end of the day. And you see that with religions all over. And I'm not saying that Satanism doesn't, fall into certain trappings here and there as well, but that is it's such a huge thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So just
gift. After all, right? That's the lesson of the Garden of Eden.
Say that again.
Knowledge is the greatest gift. That's the lesson of the Garden of Eden, right? Like, if we look at that from a totally different perspective, this is just some omnipotent being with his gerbils in a cage that's saying you can't do this thing, and the serpent's the hero of the story, being like, sure you can.
Yeah,
you'll know. And
that's another thing that I think I find fascinating about members of the Satanic Temple. Most would assume that they just threw away the Bible and they hiss at it and whatever. But you're actually pretty studied. I'm just gathering from with a few things you've said about it. You're pretty studied on the work.
Well, there's a famous quote.
The literature.
Yeah, there's a famous quote out there. I don't remember who it's attributed to, but the quote is something like, "The best way to become an atheist is to read the Bible."
Well, yeah.
It's important to also remember that Satanism isn't necessarily an opposition of religions. It's at least in the Satanic Temple, I find that it's more a pluralistic idea. In other words, I don't need you to not exist for me to exist. That's not the goal. The goal is for both of us to exist. I was just having breakfast this morning with a believer at a diner, and I was wearing my TST shirt because I was coming on this podcast, and we were having through our eggs we were having a conversation about he's a believer and I'm not, and I'm explaining that I'm a Satanist. He's like, well, I believe in God. I'm like, well, that's awesome. If you want to do that, that's great. And there were no major epiphanies from this conversation, but it should be just known that it's an equal opposition. It's not a replacement for. A lot of people misconstrue that, but I mean, even beyond that, of course we should know the source material. But that's funny in and of itself, because Satan's barely in the Bible. and if he, which one? It's never actually established that the serpent of the garden is the same serpent anywhere else except for in Revelations 1,000 years later, cobbled together. What the fuck ever. But even then, again, I was raised Jewish. And so I, primarily the 5 books of Moses and all the other good stuff. I mean, my big one is Book of Job, which I have back here. I always thought Job was a really interesting allegory, because, Satan, again, is just offering the guy food and water. Just you don't have to do this. Everything's fine. You can just not. But yeah, no, it behooves one to understand why the myths are believed in the way that they are, in order to properly explain why the arbitrary pushing of them on to us is bullshit. Like when somebody says or promulgates the lie of, well, our laws are based on the Ten Commandments. Obviously, that's not true. But a great question or a response to that is just simply ask which ones, because there's 4 different ones in the Bible. There's 4 different ones, and they're different commandment sets. And so, which ones are we talking about? And even then, right there, that is typically, the old meme of like the guy asking the question and then the NPC gets all mad faced. Like that's it right there. Like, what response do they honestly have to that? Because they probably don't know.
Yeah. I also love just the fact that at least the 10 commandments I see boundied about a lot. And I don't know which one of the 4 or whatever these are, but,
the
like
one, the one from the movie.
Yeah, most of them are just about him being a jealous God. And like, you don't worship other gods. You don't worship other people. You worship me. And then like, yeah, murder's in there. And yeah, I think stealing's in there, but there's like a lot of other things that aren't in there. Yeah, and like technically speaking, if murder's in there, like he murders people. It's like, I don't know. Anyways, we could get into that whole that, there's a lot of logical.
For thee and not for me. Rules for thee and not for me, which is definitely a mindset that people follow.
Yeah. But see, we just kind of I almost fell back into it. Again, your point was we're not meant to oppose religion, it's, what did you say? Equal opposition or equal
and opposite. Yeah. Duality.
Equal and opposite. Okay.
Symbol,
yeah.
Yeah. The symbol of the Baphomet, which is most associated with Satanism. And Baphomet, for those that don't know, is that goat-headed figure that sits on the throne with its hand up, one, and the other hand's down like that. Flame coming out of its head, usually depicted with both breasts and a phallus. It's duality. It's an equal of opposite, as above, so below. Fire and water, air and earth, and love and hate, sex and death, like all the different dualities, because Satanism embraces the gray area in between.
Yeah. And in that spirit, and maybe I'm wrong with coming from it this angle, but hold on, I wanted to pull up the statue real quick. This is what you're referring to, correct?
Yep. That's the Baphomet. That's
cool. So folks want to see. Folks want to see, that's generally what you'll see. And we've got another Baphomet statue we'll talk about here in a little bit, but let's keep on the equal the idea that we're not opposing religion. So like one of the things that I like that I've seen the Satanic Temple do, and I don't know if they do this in Illinois, so feel free to comment on this, but in other states, the local chapters will do, for example, an after school program, because a lot of churches offer after school programs, but it's ingrained in whichever religion or sect that they happen to believe in. And so here's an option that's the Satanic Temple option, where you get, I guess you would get introduced to the 7 fundamental tenets and just how to be a chill person. No,
not at all.
Not even that.
I can speak to this very credibly, because we did have an after school Satan program go into a school in Moline, Illinois, just this past school year. And I was there for it. And actually, this speaks also to the Baphomet that you just showed, and directly to the commentary about being equal and opposite. That Baphomet was created to sit next to a 10 Commandment statue on a state capitol lawn. Again, we were not asking to remove the 10 Commandments, rather to also display the Baphomet. It's an equal viewpoint that happens to be just different. But it's nonsense to claim that our laws are created on the 10 Commandments, just as much as it's nonsense. The idea is to ensure that what is enshrined in our Constitution and the Establishment Clause is a freedom from a single dominant religious viewpoint. And once you invite one into the public space, whether that be a state capitol or a school, then you have invited all of them. With After School Satan, the CEF, the Children's Evangelical Fellowship, which literally preaches to children. I want to make that very clear. They literally preach to children. Has put the Good News Club into schools all over the country, where they're teaching these kids that Jesus is Lord, And if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to burn in hell. And all of your friends that don't believe in Jesus are going to burn in hell. And you need to tell them this so that no one burns in hell. And it's just gross eschatological bullshit. And they unfortunately won in, I believe, Milford, Connecticut in 2001. Somebody needs to fact check me on that. I'm usually pretty good at these, but I can't remember that, if that was the actual township. Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that you couldn't categorically deny religious groups from operating within the school. But that, of course, opens the door to an equal and opposite program, whether that be from your local synagogue offering an after-school program, to your local mosque offering an after-school program, to the Satanic Temple offering an after-school program. And the After-School Satan Club was created as a direct reaction to that. But the curriculum is not Satanism based at all. There's no talking about Satanism. There's no talking about the tenets. There's no talking about any of that. It's a science-based curriculum that's based that is built to engage a kid's mind and think about things like logic, reason, and free thought. And so, for example, the one that I attended in Moline was structural integrity, where we had marshmallows and toothpicks and built little structures with the marshmallows and toothpicks, and then shook the table to see which ones would fall down and why. And so obviously we know that like a base of 4 will hold together better than like 1, which will just fall down immediately. It's just simple thought exercises like that. And then we played Uno and colored. Real scary shit, let me tell you. But that, that's the After School Satan Club. And there's other bits of the curriculum, like teaching like echolocation with bats, the high pitched frequencies that they can send out and bounce back. And this is how they hear and find bugs when they're flying around and so on. But that's the point. That is ASSC, the After School Satan Club, in a nutshell. And like I said, we did have one in Illinois, and we have seen, we as in Illinois, we have seen other requests for it, but they're requesting us to go into schools where there aren't good news clubs, and we're not interested in that. We don't feel that there's a place for us in a school that doesn't already have the good news club active.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. I was about to ask why only in Moline, so
that's the school that had it. I mean, I'm sure there are other schools. In fact, I know for a fact that there are other schools and school districts in Illinois that have good news clubs. But, we are typically invited by members or concerned parents that would like to see one happen. So, if you know one, feel free to reach out, because there's always an option. But, we don't just go into a school. That's not how it works. We are specifically there to offer an alternate viewpoint for kids after school, if there is a good news club that they are more or less being shuttled into.
Yeah. So unless you got anything else on that subject, I think we'll talk about another subject where it's like you provide another option.
Sure. You're driving, so go for it.
Cool. I always just make sure, just in case I'm moving too quickly. So you just told me about this before we got on the show. So I just Googled this and just found a picture. So I don't know about this article.
Oh yeah.
But you mentioned, and I love this, that like I laugh, and I hope that I'm laughing because it's like honestly a cute, but it is kind of funny, like to see like a little baby Baphomet. Like, so for folks that are listening, can you describe what we're seeing real quick? And then let's just talk about this in general.
Sure. That's the artist Chris Andres' idea of what a swaddled babe Baphomet would look like. And that was installed into the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda this past holiday season. So if we're in the future and you're in your flying car listening to this, that would have been the 2021 holiday season.
Yeah.
And that was on display for the month of November and December in the Illinois State Capitol in Springfield. Opposite a nativity that was put there by the Archdiocese, there was a very large Christmas tree. The Freedom from Religion Foundation had a large plaque up, and I don't remember if I'd have to look at my pictures. There might have been a menorah there this year or not. I don't recall. But yeah, were you going to ask a question about this one, or
I just wanted to actually
ramble? So I figured I'd just stop
no,
myself.
no, you're okay. I guess I was just thank you for describing what we saw and what where it was and everything. I was using that as another example of you giving like equal
Oh, I see.
Opportunity.
100%. Yeah. And that is exactly what happened. The interesting thing is this was not the first year we've done this. We had a different statue, which we were calling knowledge is the greatest gift. And like by shorthand calling it the snaketivity, which was a statue, a really lovely art piece of a female presenting individual's arm with their hand up with an apple in the middle of it and a snake wrapped around the arm on a box that just said knowledge is the greatest gift with the sigil of the Satanic Temple Chicago, we were the Satanic Temple Chicago before deciding to change to the Satanic Temple Illinois and be more inclusive of the rest of the state. So we'd had that statue in for 2 prior years. Yeah, there you go. There it is. And so this past year in 2021, we actually originally, we had gone through some changes, and the pandemic was real weird and for a lot of people, and so we weren't initially. I hadn't filed anything to install anything into the state capitol. And then there was an article by Bishop Paprocki, the bishop from the archdiocese, who basically went in the press and was like, Satanists have no place within the state capitol. And of course I was like, well, fuck that. Yes, we do. I'm down there all the time. I absolutely have a right to be in that state capitol. And more to the point, if your nativity is there, so is my statue. And so we went ahead and installed it, and it was a huge deal. People were real mad about it, which boggles my mind, not only because we were there for several years prior, but like there was a Festivus poll that went in a few years ago, and no one complained. I don't remember seeing a single complaint from Bishop Paprocki about the Festivus poll, not one. But anyway, so we installed it, and we actually invited the bishop to come down in a request of plurality to come down and be a part of this installation. He declined. However, a whole bunch of Catholics from around the country came out and protested and sang hymns and so on while we installed it. The only real difference between the groups, arguably, is that we had an appointment. So that was sort of a little odd.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we showed up at like 2:00 to install the statue, and like they had to lock down the Capitol for a few minutes because there was not lock it down, but they were like stopping people from coming in because basically these protesters showed up en masse to sing, and like we weren't really sure what was going to happen. But we were they going to try to stop us from putting it in? And the answer was no, of course not, because that's how plurality works. And so we went and installed it, and I waited very patiently for them to finish their singing to deliver the invocation of putting it in. But they wouldn't stop. So I just had to yell over it. There's some great footage of it. If you look on Twitter, if you look on Twitter, there's a guy, I can't remember the reporter's name, but it was a gentleman from the State Journal Register that filmed it. And it was quite nice, honestly. We just put it in there, and that was it. Gotcha. Plurality in action, just like the Constitution says. It's the weirdest thing.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Well, are there any other examples of plurality in action, that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, across the country, TST has done things like beach cleanups in Santa Cruz, where they've, adopted a portion of the beach to maintain. Adopt a highways are really big, where it's beautification and maintenance. There was invocations before city council meetings are always an interesting one. Most municipalities have some sort of prayer invocation before their city council meeting, and by and large it ends up being the dominant viewpoint, or whoever decided, it's usually the dominant viewpoint, which is again not in concordance with the Constitution. And so we have requested various Satanists have requested over time to give invocations before city council meetings. Some have gone forward. Florida, I think, was one. Alaska was another one. Some have been denied, like in Scottsdale, Arizona, where that ended up becoming a lawsuit. And ultimately, it was a real bummer of a failure on the lawsuit. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to bloviate too hard about this one, but it was a real shitty loss, because it was I think it was a hemorrhage of justice for a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of the rules for what was supposed to be established were changed during the course of the trial, and it was just not great. But there is a minor win to that, for this one, which was that, in the circuit court, they did uphold the supposition that we have deeply held beliefs and are a religion. And so we passed that test. So it's like, if we ever have another lawsuit for any of these things, no one can just say, well, you're not a religion. Well, we are. Not only are we codified here, but we're codified in this, circuit court opinion as well. So little victories. Laws don't change overnight. The world doesn't change overnight. People tend to forget that in a society that's about instant gratification and Amazon Prime delivery next day. But, fights take a long time.
So to be clear, what you're talking about was like, were you looking for equal representation? Like they do a prayer at the beginning of a meeting. You wanted to say a short piece before.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. Yeah. And
well,
that
seems reasonable.
It is 100% reasonable. And it doesn't, and the funny thing that what I don't think a lot of these municipalities seem to understand is that if they just let it happen and don't fight it, it's not a media event. It's not a press event. It's not like no one's, it's just an exercise of rights. If the city council meeting is mostly doing bishops, or, Catholics or whatever, pastors of some sort of Christian variety, and then allows a rabbi to do it too. Well, great. That's like great. But it's kind of the same thing. A Satanist doing is literally the exact same thing.
Can I ask you what, because I was raised religious. So if you asked me to do a prayer right now as a agnostic / atheist / flirting with the idea of being a Satanist, I could come up with a fucking prayer off the top of my head. I could do it right now. I'd be like, Lord, thank you for this food that you've bestowed. I could just do it, and sure. I could throw in a few other bullshit lines and make it sound. We've all done it, but like I'm just trying to picture what would a Satanist's like. What would your foreword be, or what would be mentioned possibly? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's a fairly standard invocation that's been utilized several times, and it just go. I can read it to you if you want. It's let us stand now unbowed and unfettered by arcane doctrines born of fearful minds in darkened times. Let us embrace the Luciferian impulse to eat of the tree of knowledge and dissipate our blissful and comforting delusions of old. Let us demand that individuals be judged for their concrete actions, not their fealty or arbitrary social norms and illusory categorizations. Let us reason our solutions with agnosticism in all things, holding fast only to that which is demonstrably true. Let us stand firm against any and all arbitrary authority that threatens the personal sovereignty of one or all. That which will not bend must break, and that which can be destroyed by truth should never be spared its demise. It is done. Hail Satan. That's the invocation.
Gotcha. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm going to start saying that at my family dinners. They'll be like, where's he going with this one? And then when I end it, Hail Satan, they'll be like, whoa, that just happened. So can I, sorry, were you about to say something?
No, not at all. I was giggling.
Okay. Any other examples before my next question, of kind of plurality, or where you're kind of offering another example? I'm honestly just curious because I love that that the Satanic Temple does this. So,
Oh, well, that's kind of where the Satanic Representation campaign comes into play, which I mentioned at the top of the hour. I'm co-director of. The campaign is specifically to ensure that Satanists have equal access to the public sphere for things like that, to affirm our religious beliefs if needed. There's a plethora of ways that can happen. I'm trying to think of. I mean, there's really nothing particularly active. I mean, I guess the big one that the hot ticket item right now that I'm seeing a lot of emails about would be prayers on the 50-yard line of schools, which, the Kennedy case was just decided with the in the Supreme Court in this past session. And the background on this is that there was a coach who was compelling players to pray with him at the 50-yard line during or after games. I don't remember the exact detail of which one, but he was denied the ability to do so going forward, and fucking gallingly claimed to have been fired for this and then sued. He was never fired. The fact that was ignored by the court is one of the most egregious upheavals of justice in a long fucking time, and I'm real mad about it. But he was never fired. He chose not to come back to the school afterwards, but nevertheless he sued, and they kind of created this new narrative that he was, this was religious discrimination and so on, he fucking won. The SCOTUS said that it was totally fine, and so I've seen an uptick in people requesting to have prayers done at the 50-yard line of schools. This is a tough one because, one, we don't proselytize, especially to children. Part of the reason why After School Satan doesn't just go to schools is because we do not proselytize. It's just that's just not what we do. We are in opposition of Good News Club, and that's it. But two, we don't really have satanic prayers. I mean, an invocation like that one, is a very specific thing, but I guess that would work, but I don't see what the relevance of that would be on a football field. And, also we're just not I as a Satanist would never just go to a football field and be like, hey, I'd like to offer a prayer. That's just, one, I'm more of an AV club kid, but two, I'm just not going to do that. That just seems, so the parameters by which that would happen, I think, would be very specific, where if there was a faculty member who invited us or invited a satanic minister, a local minister, to come in, because we do have ordained ministers in the Satanic Temple. But if they were to invite a minister to do it, maybe I don't know. That is another one of those things where it's just complicated. But that's I guess the hottest ticket item right now that people are talking about.
You said you have ordained ministers, is in ordained by the Satanic Temple?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. You don't have what? Sorry, you were saying you're ordained?
I was saying I'm an ordained minister within the Satanic Temple. And so the Satanic Temple has a ministry that and there are I'm not the only one, obviously. There's quite a few ministers. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to make the joke, so you're saying that there are ordained ministers in the Satanic Temple, as in ministers from churches were coming, but I was just, it was a reach. It was a reach for a joke. So, so, hey, you kind of just brought up in multiple different ways, and it sounds like you're pretty well versed in doing this. I'm honestly asking, how are you able to justify the Satanic Temple as a religion?
Well, from a textbook definition of religion, religions are a group of, they focus on a group of individuals with deeply held beliefs, core values, with community and, iconography, art, ritual, etc. Some religions have some level of supernatural or theistic qualities to them, but not all of them do. One of the biggest things that I see levied against the Satanic Temple, honestly, one of the biggest criticisms is people claiming that we are, quote, not a religion, which is nonsense. We absolutely are. It's only the absence of theism or supernaturalism that seems to trip people out. I would argue that that is a hangover of Abrahamic thought. The idea that the yardstick of measuring religion is coming from, an Abrahamic background of, Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, where it's basically saying, well, it has to be theistic in some way, monotheistic specifically. It's nonsense. And there are plenty of other religious scholars that agree with this. And even in the general, population that think about these things, I don't really know anybody that doesn't think of Buddhism as a religion, even though Buddhism is patently non-theistic in a lot of ways. And, there are various levels of Buddhism or various flavors of Buddhism, some of which are more in tune with the idea of like a reincarnation, where some are a little bit more humanist and therefore eschew the supernatural elements. Taoism is another one that's like that. Secular Judaism and Reform Judaism, more or less, same idea. The stories in the Bible are allegories. God may or may not exist. It's sort of irrelevant. It's more of a cultural kind of thing. And this is not just me saying this. This is how religious scholars see this. Sorry, I should turn my notifications off. I thought I'd already done that. But there's that aspect of it. But then also, if we want to look at from the United States specifically, we passed all our bars to obtain the 501c3 church status because of all of these things, because there's really no disagreement within the scholarly religious community of what defines a religion. Everything that the Satanic Temple does in thought and action and belief qualifies, and so it's there. This not Supreme Court, but the whatever the circuit court affirmation of that is proof positive of that. And there's a great book that I recommend to people, anybody that's interested in the Satanic Temple, called Speak of the Devil by Joseph Laycock, right here. And it is he's a professor of religious studies at I believe the University of Texas, and so it's a very scholarly look at the history of the Satanic Temple up through about 2018. And it should be noted that there's been some structural and organizational changes since the book has been published, but it comes at it from the angle of a religious professor looking at a new religious movement rather than anything else. And so I hope that answers the question. It might be a little bit long-winded, but I think that satisfies the question, I think.
Oh, it absolutely does, man. I just thank you for breaking it down that way, because what you made me realize is that I was looking through that lens. You said, typically, or people that ask that question and really don't understand that, which that's why I was asking it, view religion through a theistic lens. Like, I view religion as you have to believe in, and I'm being harsh with my words purposefully a little bit, you have to believe in magic. I say that, but you said it better, supernatural, or I think supernatural is the word you used. So I'm using magic. I'm purposefully being a little brash, but really what I mean is supernatural, or things that defy logic, reason, or science, the laws, the scientific laws, the understanding that we have of the world. Excuse me. So yeah, thank you for breaking them down. That definitely satisfied the question for me, because I wondered, and I viewed actually the Satanic Temple as kind of what you were corrected me on earlier, which is that you aren't the opposition.
Yeah.
You're demonstrating plurality. Can I ask, you mentioned an organization earlier. I'm not expecting you to be able to speak on them or to know much about whatever, but you mentioned them earlier, so you have some awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It was something like the Freedom from Religion Coalition or something.
Freedom from Religion Foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. And so would the difference between them is that they are not a religion, they are a foundation. But do you know at all what they do? Are they similar to like kind of offering plurality, and are they really trying to push like no religion at all? Like
they are pushing for no religion at all in the public space.
Even Satanic Temple.
I don't want to speak to their mission. I don't.
Sure. Fair enough.
That's not my place to do. I have a great love and respect for the FRFF. Honestly, I'm a huge fan. I've got books by Andrew up on the Andrew Seidel, who I mentioned, or I don't think I mentioned Andrew Seidel in this, but he's their former legal counsel. He wrote a really beautiful book called The Founding Myth that really explores, or maybe I did mention it earlier, but it explores the myths surrounding the claim that America is a Christian nation when it absolutely patently is not. And he has a new book coming out actually. This is not a sponsored comment, but I did pre-order. He's got a new book coming out that kind of explores Christian nationalism and its role in the January 6th insurrection and all that. But FRFF has pushed for years to not push for plurality necessarily, but they have in some ways done that. The plaque that I mentioned in the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, I have a picture of it around here somewhere. It's probably on my phone, but it basically just says that, by inviting one religious viewpoint into this space, you are inviting multiple religious viewpoints, the viewpoint of no religions in the space. And so that's what the plaque is. And they've done other things over the years, like they pushed against Parsonage in Illinois, which Parsonage is, if you're a pastor, you can usually write off a pastor or minister. You can usually write off your property tax if you're living within a certain. Yeah, I don't know all the laws about it, but
I was actually going to ask about this exact subject, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm glad you will. I have a lot to say about it, but they've definitely pushed against that kind of stuff and so on. But the larger question is, how similar are they to us? It's very different because, again, well, one, they're not Satanists, and I'm a Satanist, but two, I guess I want to reframe the lens a little bit. Sure. The Satanic Temple is a religious organization that will occasionally engage in public sphere, for lack of a better term, activism, but that comes from the deeply held beliefs and not any other way around. It's not, the Satanic Temple is not an activist organization. It is a religion, and some of the pushing for ensuring rights come from those religious beliefs. And that's a very important distinction between the two organizations, because it's to paint TST as an activist organization, I think, is to completely ignore a really rich and beautiful history of Satanism going back to the 1700s with Enlightenment era thinking, this romantic idea around the romantic Satanism idea around the French Revolution times and so on. There's a lineage, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that Satanism is more than just, a holiday display,
Yeah.
So they're just two, we're very, very different organizations, very, very opposite in that way. Although even though some of the public facing, I guess, action looks similar. So you already alluded to why Satan is used as the symbol or mascot. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure I'm correct in my understanding. It's the idea that you lean into enlightenment and everything else, right? Like, can you let's return to that topic just for a moment before we get to Parsonage. Well, Satan is a perfect metaphor for that rejection of arbitrary authority, and I sort of alluded to this with that idea of the the Garden of Eden thing. Again, if we look at this from the lens of snap back and look at it, it's this weird creator god who's real fucking mad and has created like a little terrarium for his gerbils, and is making them pray to him all the time. And do exactly as he asks all the time, and then also tempting them for no reason, because with this tree of knowledge, that it's forced servitude at the end of the day. What sort of cruel god does that? Calling the serpent the hero of the story is a rejection of that level of arrogance and tyranny. The story of Job, again, he's torturing Job in the desert for being a great dude, ostensibly. Why the fuck would you do that? Like, what sort of just God will do this? The old ontological argument about like, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, either he's aware of it and unwilling to do anything about it, or he's aware of it and purposefully doing it. Or he's unaware of it and therefore not and unable to do anything about it. Therefore means that he's not all powerful. There's a level of culpability to where, if God actually exists, I'm not fucking interested. I'd rather serve in hell than to reign in heaven, or reign in hell than to serve in heaven, kind of thing. The old line from "Oh my God, it fell out of my head. I'm a terrible Satanist." Nope. Anyway, that sort of rejection, I think, is really important. But there's another thing when it comes to Satanism, which is the concept of attribution versus identification. Prior to Anton LaVey, the affair of poisons notwithstanding, for anyone that's a deep cut scholar, prior to LaVey, in the late 50s, no one really said, I'm a Satanist. Satanism was something that was attributed to you by someone else. And more often than not, it was a way of stripping you of your humanity and giving people the license and ability to hurt, maim, rape, and kill you. You think about the Salem witch trials, you think about the Crusades, you think about all the scientists like Galileo and everyone else who was imprisoned for deciding to go against a heliocentric model of the world, and instead of suggesting that maybe we're not the center of the universe. I mean, these people were called heretics and in league with the devil for it. It's a way of stripping away somebody's humanity. And so to declaratively and defiantly say, I identify with Satan, is massively important for some individuals. For someone who was baptized or raised in a religion where they were given no choice into what they were what they did with their lives, to embrace this and say, fuck that, I'm going to be who I'm going to be, is massively important. And some of us are spooky weirdos that love bones and weird occult shit, and like, cool, that's a depiction of Satanism too. But it's really representative of anybody willing to go against the status quo and defiantly say, I will exist the way that I exist without regard for how you feel about it. And you can be whoever you want, but I'm absolutely going to be who I am. Hail fucking Satan. That's why. I get that question a lot, honestly. Like, why Satan? That's one of the biggest questions that we get. Why Satan? Because no one else really embodies that spirit. There's no other mythological figure that kind of that really does it in the same way. There's Pan, there's and Bacchanalia and all those things, and Dionysus and so on. But Satan's the one that sort of codifies a lot of these ideas directly into a single thing. And that's not even us. That's Milton and Blake and Shelley and yeah. I hope that answers the question. Like I said, long-winded, but it's something I'm actually fairly passionate about, because you know what? I'll finish with one more thing and another thing. The the idea that like we have gotten a message to the Satanic Temple Illinois Facebook page that I keep around just because it makes me laugh every time, where someone emailed saying, hey, I'm a huge fan of the Satanic Temple, but I work in marketing and I feel like you guys would win more flies with honey if you didn't use the satanic imagery, because Satan is such a polarizing figure. And it would just boggled my mind. Like, yeah, that's why I'm a Satanist, because I identify with Satan. I don't give a shit about the marketing behind that. Also, like I said, I was raised Jewish. No one ever told me I'd win more flies with honey by being less Jewy. Like it doesn't make sense to me that someone would say that, like I don't like, if I were interested in, egalitarian humanistic rights and ensuring plurality of, things in active spaces, I'd join the secular humanists, or I'd join the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but I didn't because I'm a Satanist. I identify with Satan and QED.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for being, no need to apologize. That's why I brought you on, and I want to give you this space, and I'd love to have you on again in the future. I'm having a lot of fun speaking with you, and I'm learning a lot. And I'd like to think that my listeners are too. So I just wanted to, I don't know what brought it up, but I think we can both have a quick laugh before we get back to the topic of parsonage, which it sounds like you got stuff to talk on, and then we can start to wrap up, get some lunch. So I think it's just funny. I don't know what you said that brought up this idea, but this cartoon idea of Satan and Jesus that a lot of people had, myself as a former believer have, where it's like, there's God, right? I said Jesus, I think, but there's God, which colloquially is also known as Jesus, but there's God. And then, there's Satan, and he's like, he also exists, but he's like out there doing bad stuff, and he can like tempt you, and he's got like equal power to God. And it's just kind of funny. Like when you think about it that way, like it really seems like a cartoon,
Yep.
Something straight out of Looney Tunes.
Ridiculous. And the other thing that people seem to forget is that, like, if let's just say for the sake of argument that God exists and created everything. God created Satan.
Right. That's what I was trying to, that's why
all of this is his doing. It's his choice. No one else's in that aspect. And so it's just ridiculous to sort of pastiche this onto the scapegoat. I mean, Jesus is the ultimate scapegoat story. Literally just taking, slaughtering the lamb for everybody else's sins or whatever, even though he didn't actually die and was totally fine and just came back 3 days later because he just gave up his weekend for you. But the whole supposition falls apart when you actually look at these things critically. I guess that's the point.
Yeah. One thing for me, and it was in some philosophy class that I took. I can't think of what the title was, but somebody asked the question, are things predetermined, and are they happening according to plan? Or is it like Bill O'Reilly, like, fuck it, we'll do it live? Like, is everything happening live right now? And I think that's a very interesting question. I always pose it to people that believe in any sort of religion. Are things happening now? And like, you can call God and he's like on the line and it's all happening. He's like, I'm dealing with a lot of shit right now. Or if he's, or if it's all predetermined. It's interesting because either way you go, there's a lot of questions that come up. If it's predetermined, then like, what the fuck is his problem? Why are the things that are happening going on? I know a lot of times their answer is God works in mysterious ways. But anyways, I'm kind of going on a tangent now.
No, it's fine. And it's a philosophical trapping to say that God works in mysterious ways and just let go and let God.
Yeah, sure. Just
is really
mysterious.
It's a way of not having to think about it. It's a way of not having to deal with it. I mean, in a way, non-belief is a little scary because then it's just us. And there's nothing after death. And we don't even understand what consciousness is at this point. And the things that we do, the way that we hurt each other, the way that we hurt animals, the way that we do all these things, that's just us. It's intellectually lazy to be like, well, that's God, and God has a plan. No, no, these are conscious choices that humans make. And that is harder to deal with in some ways. It's easier to deal with because then we can look at this from a scientific background and say, okay, well, we can't even really define reality. What is sentience? What sentience does everything have? What is measurable and tangible and qualitative and quantitative when it comes to life and experience and so on? And what does that say to the stray cat down the street, or the cat that I have here in the house, or, any of these other things? And when you begin to relate to things in that way, you ascribe, I don't want to say humanity because I don't want to anthropomorphize any animal, but you ascribe a sense of responsibility, a shared sense of space on this weird floating rock that we all live on. And I think that is a beautiful thing, but it's a lot fucking harder. Because you don't have the luxury of just saying, God will figure it out, or like, all this pain is nonsense. And, there are other religions that say that, death is not real, and that we all experience, we're all, a subjective consciousness experiencing, ourselves multiple times through the ages, or, I don't know, put a Tool video in the back behind me. But like, there are other ways of approaching these kinds of thoughts and ideas and so on. And Satanism embraces the gray area and says, I don't necessarily need to know all of these things all the time, although I strive to. What I do know is that a lot of the suffering around doesn't need to be there if we just choose not to do it anymore.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, I want to talk about one more topic really quick, and we'll start to wrap up. Parsonage.
Sure.
What is, I was going to ask, go ahead.
Parsonage is basically just the ability for a minister or rabbi or imam or whatever that is a leader of a congregation in a municipality. And of course the laws change state by state, county by county, et cetera, allowing some sort of tax relief or tax burden relief from either property taxes or potentially write-offs on mortgages or rent or whatever, if one is ministering to their flock. This is something that I am personally looking into because, once again, if a priest can do it and a minister can do it, well, I'm a minister. And I'm the head of the congregation in Illinois. That should be available to me too. It's very nascent in where I'm at with it. I have a lot of other things. I do a lot of things, and so I don't have the time to devote to this all the time. But it is something that I'm considering looking into. Because that would have implications, I think, for ministers all over the country, not just Satanic ministers, any minister. There might be ministers of small, Unitarian congregations that are not able to take advantage of this. There might be rabbis or imams that might not be able to take advantage of this because at the moment, it's, again, a dominant religious viewpoint that seems to be doing a lot of this. And so I'm particularly interested in this subject.
Me too. That's what, yeah. So I sounds like you're working on it still. I was going to ask, if it's doable.
Lucian Greaves, the co-founder of the Satanic Temple, recently said, the law is clearly on our side most of the time, but that doesn't mean the courts are. And so who knows? I can't predict the future. I'm not a lawyer, and and none of this has been tested in the courts as far as I'm aware. So who knows? It's entirely possible that I could apply and someone would be like, yep. And that would be that, which would be ideal because that's how, a pluralistic society should work. It's entirely possible they'd fight me. Who knows? But it's an interesting thought experiment.
So are you gonna apply?
Oh, I have no idea. Like I said, this was just something that I've looked at, I've considered. So who knows? I do not know.
Should keep me posted on that. I'm really interested in that.
Okay.
We'll keep in touch, of course, but
We
love to
talked
have
very
dinner.
little about marijuana, which I find surprising given the general.
Yeah. No, for sure. Hey, look, people, we did start out this podcast and have a huge focus, on marijuana, cannabis,
Yeah.
because Illinois had just legalized it.
Mhm.
But really, I started this show originally to talk about civil liberties.
I see.
And so cannabis, since it had just been legalized, that was definitely a huge topic. And that is a huge topic that we're still trying to take on. But I truly believe we're going to win that battle. So where do we go next? And so I've been talking to legal sex workers. You mentioned legal sex work earlier. We've been talking to licensed sex workers from the state of Nevada to talk about working conditions and how can things be better there. And here again with the Satanic Temple, it's just another example of me trying to figure out like another way that you can go with that. So
I see.
So
My
yeah, and
apologies for understanding that. My bad.
no apology needed. If you could tell, the reason I couldn't hold myself back, I think on your third or fourth tenet, when it was you had mentioned a bunch of different things, and I was like, before you move on, can I ask really quick, does do drugs fall into that category? Because I definitely was concerned, or not concerned, I was curious how the Satanic Temple, because I alluded to it earlier, I had a conversation with a religious freedoms lawyer who I'd love to connect you with, because I don't know if there's conversation there, but she was interested in learning more. We were talking about the Satanic Temple, and it was just when I just started to learn about it.
Yeah.
And we were specifically talking about the fact that churches can use sacraments. And in fact, most churches don't even have to provide a reason for a sacrament if the sacrament's alcohol. Like, they don't have to provide a reason. But some churches have had to provide a reason. And I think a good example of one,
peyote.
I was going to say peyoteism is a good example where they've said it's justified, but like, who makes that determination and all these things?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that is such a key and important point. I have a lot to say on this issue, honestly, but but that determination of deeply held beliefs that enshrined that religious practice, I think, is fantastic. And what I really hate is a bunch of I'm speaking only as me. I really hate it when I see a bunch of white people trying to go in and do a bunch of peyote under those auspices. I'm like, don't be a cultural tourist with your drugs, in my opinion. But also, I have seen people try to link that to the bodily autonomy tenet. But at the end of the day, like I said, and I was very clear in my language earlier, the Satanic Temple does not require anyone to do any of that. And so it's not a one-to-one in those types of cases. Like in that aspect, peyote is a part of that religious aspect. Peyote is not a part of Satanism. Satanism is individualized and reverential of the self. At the end of the day, it has nothing to do with we don't, like, Satanists aren't required to wear their hair in any specific way, or take any specific drugs, or say any particular prayers, or anything like that. So it becomes a little bit different. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway.
No apology needed. I was hoping that you can probably see where I'm going with this. I was hoping, I didn't figure it'd be required, but I was hoping that maybe some way we could make it optional.
I mean, really, that's kind of the rub, right? Anything is optional. Anything is on the table if it is not in contravention, at least for the Satanic Temple, as long as it's not in contravention to the 7 tenets. It doesn't harm anybody. Like, that's, again, what an adult does with their own body is their choice. That's kind of, yeah.
So Can I ask, like, is it normal in other states or with other chapters? I didn't know if you just maybe weren't there yet. Like, do they have normal meetings like churches do? Like every Sunday we get
Oh, yeah,
together and
we do. Yeah, you know what, you mentioned that earlier, and I missed. I didn't respond to that portion of it. So one, we actually we switched language to congregations. Chapters was an earlier. Uh, uh, we used to call local groups chapters, and now they're congregations.
okay.
But everybody does their own meetings and so on. But there's actually a Tuesday services that happens as well. During the pandemic, obviously meeting in person was a lot more difficult. Events were canceled all over the world of all types. And tenet 5, right? Beliefs should conform to the best scientific understanding of the world. And so in-person congregating did not make sense. And so the Satanic Estate was created. And the Satanic Estate was where Satanists from TST and really anybody who was interested could congregate in an online space. And it's the content has continually grown, but Tuesday services are kind of the big one, which happen every Tuesday evening at I think 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern. I don't know. It's always Salem time, and I'm in Chicago, so it's an hour difference, but whatever. It's on the site. But those services are usually led by a minister and go over all kinds of topics that are generally related to Satanism and satanic thought. And those are Tuesdays, and they are, but again, it's not a requirement. People are welcome to go if they'd like. I myself, I visit every so often, and I've spoken at a few of them, but I've, it's here and there as to when I can actually make it. But yeah, so that's Tuesday services. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I got a little bit of a rapid fire of questions to close out today.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And they're just a few. What is, and we don't have to dwell on this too far. Like I say, we can swift right through this, but if you have a lot to say, don't hesitate. Right. What is the difference between the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan?
Church of Satan is an organization that was founded by Anton Szandor LaVey in the late 50s, I think 56, maybe early 60s. I don't remember. Again, bad Satanist.
All good.
It's a much more individualistic veneration of the self. They, as far as I know, are not a 501c3 recognized church. Although they are really a cultural touchstone and milestone for many Satanists, myself included. I first read the Satanic Bible in the mid 90s. And still, I still have my copy on my shelf, and it was a really key moment in the identification of Satanism. But they're a little bit less active in the public sphere than as we are, and people think there's like this giant fight between the two of us, and there isn't. Most of us just don't care.
Yeah. Am I correct to understand that the Church of Satan does actually believe in Satan, though?
No, they don't.
Is that wrong?
No, okay. Church of Satan does not believe in Satan. LaVey's writings have took a lot of inspiration from the British occultist Aleister Crowley and his work with the OTO and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Lima in general, which is a whole nother topic I could talk about someday. And so there is a good bit of what could be considered ceremonial magic and so on. I've known numerous Church of Satan Satanists that have had varying beliefs as to whether or not they believed in any of it. Some did, some didn't. A lot of the Church of Satan's beliefs revolve around, again, the veneration of the self. And so over time, some people care a little bit less about some of that. Some people care a little bit more about that. They've had their own schisms with the Temple of Set and Michael Aquino going off and creating the Temple of Set, which was a theistic and magic-based satanic organization. But no, they do not believe in a literal Satan.
Is there anybody that actually does? Like, is there anybody that's like, I believe in everything, but I choose to worship Satan?
there are theistic Satanists out there.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's the thing is, like, there are a lot of different ways one can, a lot of lenses people view Satan through.
Yeah.
There are other satanic organizations out there. The one that has made the news not too long ago was the Order of the Nine Angles, which is a violent, or at least the member there was a violent white supremacist type rhetoric. And there are other satanic groups too. I believe Nine Angles is theistic, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But there absolutely are people that are theistic Satanists. There are individual, and again, Satanism as a whole is very individualistic. And so, it could just be an individual that is a theistic Satanist that's also into Crowley and Thelema, or it could be someone who completely venerates the idea of Satan and, Kali and, destructors in general, or things like that. And so there's a lot of room for interpretation, I guess, would be the way that I would describe it.
Gotcha. What is Crow and Coley and the stuff you just referred to?
What is what? I'm sorry.
What are some of those things you just referred to? Sorry, I didn't want to blow past it just because I didn't know what you meant. And maybe some of my listeners didn't either.
Sure. Yeah. So Aleister Crowley was a very influential ceremonial magician who kind of syncretized a whole bunch of different esoteric traditions, from yoga to Kabbalah to all these other things, tarot, and so on. And this all falls under, I guess, Western esotericism, which is its own sort of thing, which looks at like alchemy and things like that. But Crowley was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a magic organization. And then later the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientalis, also a fraternal magical organization, and eventually headed the OTO and then split off and sort of, I don't know. You can read his biography on that, but he created.
I see now why they're okay. This is what I just about said something that would have made you upset. I was about to say, I see why there's hate for Satanism now, but that's not Satanists now, but that's not what I meant. When you said esoteric and all these things, and you talked about QAnon earlier, I was like, how is there a link there? And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard Alex Jones being like, oh, the esoteric writings and blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, they come up with these crazy ass stories. I didn't realize though, that that's all these things you're talking about. They like bake lore into that.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's, I'm sure that QAnoners, at least some, probably know who Aleister Crowley is and probably tie him to the Bavarian Illuminati or whatever the fuck they're yelling about. And like,
sorry to cut you off with that, but I had an episphany.
Yeah, it's you can go as far down the rabbit hole on Western esotericism as you can anything else. I would make the argument that Western esotericism at least has a scholarly bent to it because, if you look at it from the lens of things like alchemy and science and things like that, a lot of the thinkers, when we're talking about the anywhere 15th to 17th or 18th century, science, philosophy, and metaphysics were all sort of the same thing. And so a lot of the thought processes and I don't know, maybe not Newton's Principia, but like a lot of different texts kind of, again, syncretized a lot of those kinds of ideas together. And, some of these ideas have become incredibly important cultural touchstones, whether we realize they're there or not. John Dee, Dr. John Dee, the spiritualist who was, claims to have spoken to angels and created the Enochian language, was worked with Queen Elizabeth and has been credibly suggested as being like the fundamental idea for some characters that have shown up in pop culture, hundreds of years later. And all sorts of little touchstones like that down the line. So I guess it just kind of depends on whether you look at this as like buying into it completely or with a skeptical eye. I would argue that QAnon is just like buying into whatever fanciful nonsense there is. Whereas like I can look at the same information and be like, cool, and not have to, not immediately go down that rabbit hole of like, oh my God, this is, the Illuminati taking over and the Jews or whatever they're again yelling about today.
Sure.
Because it's always the Jews. It's always
it's always the Jews. It always goes back to the Jews and their space lasers.
Exactly. But anyway, so Crowley went off and created his own system with Thelema. He claimed to have spoken to an angel and blah, 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 blah. You know how they do. But that's Crowley. I don't remember who else I mentioned, but whatever.
I didn't realize you were referring to people, so that cleared it up. At least people can look up the last names. I thought you were referring to like some like theory or something that I should know about. And I was like, no. I don't know.
I mean, Crowley, I think is just abstractly important to know about from in a scholarly look at Satanism and modern Satanism in general, because a lot of his ideas that are magic and non-magic related, I think, have a lot of basis in modern satanic thought of like rejecting doing things backwards, doing things for the sake of doing things, and so on. Like that is a satanic idea, but it's non-theistic and non-supernatural. So the ideas are good, but they only go so far, I guess, would be the way I would say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so besides joining the Facebook page, which we will link in the podcast description below, folks. So if you want to, if that's easier on you, just go in the show notes for the podcast description for this episode and just click the link and it'll take you over to the Facebook page. Besides joining that and becoming active and getting involved, how else could people support the Satanic Temple in Illinois?
In Illinois, the big thing would be the charity drive right now. Honestly, like I said, we are collecting the menstrual products for those with uteruses in need, and so panty liners and unopened boxes, panty liners and pads, top of the list. And on the Facebook page, again, we do have a list of all of our partner businesses that are hosting boxes, donation drop boxes, like Illuminated Brewing, Illuminated Brewworks, Sound Growler Brewing out in Tinley, Bucket of Blood, Books and Records in Chicago, which also has our little satanic library set up. So they have a whole bunch of books that we sort of curate for them on a Satanic Temple shelf, which is kind of fun. Or Satanic Temple Illinois shelf, and Orknoy, get yourself some food, etc. There's a lot of places you can drop these off. That would be the biggest thing. And then, for those interested in financial contributions, you can go to the satanictemple.com. And there's, several ways of donating, but that's, optional. Like the members don't have to do it. Nobody else has to either. But if that's always helpful, because lawsuits are expensive. Yeah.
Great. Cool. Well, I'd love to have you back on in the future to, I know that you all are constantly doing great things like the charity drive that you mentioned. So in the spirit of that, I'd love to help however I can to use this platform. And I just want to thank you for sitting down with me and taking so much time. I really, really appreciate it. Again, I learned a lot today. I'm going to have to rewatch this because there's probably more, there was a lot discussed in this episode. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And thanks for
definitely be reaching out again in the future to have you back on. So folks, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate it positively. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. The easiest way to do that, I would say, would be to go to chillinois.net/contact. You can send me an email and you can ask a question. I can forward that on to Adam, or next time I have him on the show, just ask him, myself. So appreciate you all tuning into this episode. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.
Take care.